Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm here with a very special video, my top 5 requests for the Greenskins update, and these are for the free update specifically. So I decided to do a couple videos. I'm going to be doing one here about the stuff that I would like to see in a free update. This is stuff that I think would be very easy for a Creative Assembly to implement, mostly just balance changes, plus a few new units that I think would be very easy for them to implement. And then I'm going to be doing a separate video about the things that I think would take a little bit more resources and therefore are more likely to be in the paid DLC that we are expecting to be coming. Of course, no confirmation on that yet, but they did say they were looking at a Greenskins rework for 2020, and it's 2020 now, so I figured I would release this video and chat about it with you all. First, this channel is primarily dedicated to multiplayer, but I do want to make one campaign note. For my number 5 is Force Confederations in campaign. I'm not going to touch the WoW mechanic for now. I think there are people who play a lot more campaign who are better suited to answer how to fix that mechanic, or not necessarily fix, but improve that mechanic. For myself, the only thing I would like to see is the ability similar to Norska. If you beat an enemy legendary lord or an enemy faction leader in general, you can force them into a confederation with you. So you take over their land, their troops, and everything. From what I understand of the Greenskins lore, granted I'm no expert, they do this sort of thing relatively often, and like if a boss loses to another boss, then he'll join his WA, right? And sort of they fight each other and build and grow in power that way. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I think that would be a very loreful and flavorful addition, and would allow you the option to either conquer your fellow Greenskins at the point of a choppa, or at the end of a blade, I don't know, or by more diplomatic means, if you so choose. Next up, this is going to be the longest portion. I want to talk about some existing lords for the Greenskins. Generally, I would say Greenskins being a very lore-dependent faction, first things first, WA, there's no reason for this to be an ability that you need to buy. This is the faction ability similar to Murderous Prowess or Martial Prowess for your Elvish faction, or the Bestial Surge for the Beastmen. There's no reason why this needs to be something that you can purchase or not. I think it should be free on all Greenskins characters, and you shouldn't be able to deselect it just in case, you know, newer players make the mistake of deselecting it, which would be absolutely a massive mistake. The second thing is because Greenskins are dependent on their lords for WoW, since lords actually carry the ability, and none of their lords currently have self-healing, they're all relatively squishy as well. You look across the board, they don't really have many lords with much HP. Skarsnik, I believe, is the highest at 5,000. Let's check the monster lords. Yeah, less than 5,000 for the war boss on the Wyvern, and Azag, of course, is in a similar position. So I mean, you don't have anyone with more than 5,001 HP for Skarsnik, and being that, you know, orcs are supposed to be big and tough, they don't have the best leadership, they're not necessarily the brightest, but they certainly have a lot of meat on their bones, right? And I think that should be reflected in their health stat. All of the Greenskins lords are way too squishy in my opinion in terms of their HP, and it shows pretty big in terms of their gameplay in that there are only a couple lords that you can reliably get more than one WA with. Because WA is a melee conditional recharge time, you will very rarely get more than one in a given match. Maybe Skarsnik you can sometimes. Sometimes you can with Grimgor if you stick him in a melee, but most of the other ones you pretty much have to dedicate them to chasing routing units to be able to recharge that WA timer, which definitely feels a little bit bad, and that primarily comes back to their low HP pools in my opinion. Now, as for the lords themselves, Wurzag and Azag have and always will be competitive. I think just by their innate abilities, they're going to offer you a great tool set, so really no need to touch them. Skarsnik and Grimgor, well, I think they're better than a lot of other people think they are. I think they're actually decent. They could use a little bit of love, especially Mr. Grimgor Ironhide, so we'll start with him. He is the only Greenskins lord with Stand Your Ground, which is nice, but referring back to WoW, I think Grimgor, similar to how Cetra has the next level of My Will Be Done, Grimgor should have an upgraded WoW where it gives a bigger power surge across the field. Maybe it has a longer recharge time, sure, but just has a greater effectiveness. so that if you take Grimgor, since he can only be in one place at one time, and by his nature that makes him very limited in flexibility, at least he can give your entire army a nice big juiced burst at the appropriate time. And I like big timing pushes like that because they are very skill dependent. If you have two very good players matched up, the opposing player may be able to kind of kite that out and force the Greenskins to waste it. The Greenskins player has to think about, when am I going to use this, and if it's an even bigger power spike with an even longer cooldown, it's more of a risk reward, right? And so I like that personally. I think that'd be a great way to make Grimgor stand out a little bit more from the other Greenskins lords. Another thing for Grimgor would be a Queek style explosion, something to clear out the chaff around him so that he can chase whatever his target is. The biggest issue with Grimgor, he is solid in melee right now, an absolutely scary melee combatant other than the low HP pool, but he has a hard time keeping up with his target if they choose to simply walk in the other direction, which most units can, considering he's relatively slow. So a nice little Queek style speed boost and explosion to clear out units around him would be very welcome. Next up, Skarsnik. I actually like Skarsnik quite a bit. He has the highest HP of any Greenskins lord, and it would be cool if he got even just like, I don't know, 200 more HP. I really think he's pretty decent where he's at. The only thing I would like for Skarsnik is for him to have Vanguard baseline. I don't really understand why he doesn't. I know it's a skill in campaign, which they could easily replace with something more interesting and more fun, but having him have Vanguard would just obviously allow you to go more heavily into the all Vanguard builds. And if you look at the other assassin, if we should call them that, or a sneaky type legendary lords, like, of course, the new Snitch and the ever-forgotten Tretch, both of them have Vanguard, right? So, in addition to Kazrak, I think, as well. So, Skarsnik, he's a legendary lord. He's a sneaky legendary lord. He should have Vanguard in multiplayer. That's it for him. As for the non-legendary lords, I think the Night Goblin War Boss, he is good because basically he has Tormentor Sword. And on that note, talking about the Orc War Boss, he's not too bad. An HP buff would definitely make him a little bit more viable as kind of a cheap monster option. Cheap flying monster option, that is. But his items, I mean, Opal Amulet is pretty good. I actually like this item quite a bit. Potion of Strength recently got a buff, so it's not bad, but there's just really nothing here that makes me say, I want this guy, right? Now, there are a couple items I think they could add to the Orc War Boss that would really set him apart and make you consider him versus the other lords as an interesting choice. The first one is the ever-present Helm of Discord. If I pop over here, there are a couple of characters who they've kind of band-aided this onto to make them decent. A notable one is the melee Glade Lord. Hard to compete with Prey of Anathema, so they gave him this guy right here, which is probably the best item currently in the game in multiplayer in terms of generic items. Helm of Discord, exceptionally strong. That would make him almost an auto-pick. Maybe not an auto-pick, but a very strong contender for competitive matchups in a lot of situations. I don't know that that's necessarily what you want. It certainly would be cool, don't get me wrong, but I don't really want the Helm of Discord to turn into this patch's Potion of Toughness, for those of you guys who remember that from Game 1. But speaking of Potion of Toughness, now hear me out on this one. Nobody in multiplayer has a healing potion item right now except for legendary characters, you know, like Teclis and so on. Wouldn't it be kind of cool? I mean, I was talking about the Orc's toughness earlier. Let's accentuate that a little bit more and maybe even just give the Orc War Boss a Potion of Toughness. It doesn't heal very much, and you do kind of have to use it at the right time to get the value from. I believe it also gives armor and melee defense, or maybe only one of the two. You guys will have to correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But that would set him apart. It's not a super elegant solution, but Greenskins, let's be honest, aren't an elegant faction, and the Potion of Toughness, if it were unique to him, I don't think it would necessarily cause tremendous issues. And because of the other things I've spoken about, I don't think that it would make him necessarily an auto-pick. At least I think the Potion of Toughness would arguably be weaker than the Helm of Discord. You guys can argue about that in the comments if you want, but that's my 2 cents. Either of those two items would set him apart, obviously, from the crowd, or just something, some kind of support item, something to set him apart, basically, in terms of the other lord's abilities, and items are the way to do that. I have one more lord to talk about, but I'm going to punt on him for now. We'll save him for a little bit later. Let's move on to number 3. For Lore of Magic, this one's going to be relatively quick. I would like for Sneaky Stabbin to have an Overcast that gives anti-large, similar to how Lord of Nehekara has Jav's Incantation of Cursed Blades. You can overcast this for plus 16 bonus versus large for just a little bit more Winds of Magic. Something like this on Lore of the Little Wa would allow you to get anti-large in an all-goblin build. Currently, there are no goblin units, I guess unless you count the Arachnarok Spider, that have anti-large. So having this would allow you to go with a themed goblin build and still get a bit of anti-large. It also addresses one of the Greenskins' main issues, which is simply a lack of anti-large across the board. For number 2, I would like weapon variations for orc units. Now, I've talked about this in a multitude of videos in the past, but Black Orcs had a rule in tabletop called Armed to the Teeth. Now, these guys here, this Crimson Killers, has it on their tooltip, but it just means they have splash attacks. It doesn't mean what it should mean. What it meant in tabletop is that Black Orcs could choose every round of combat which weapons they were using, meaning they could choose whether to use a chopper and shield. They could choose whether to use a two-handed weapon, as they do in Total War Warhammer. They could choose to use two-hand weapons, dual-wielding a la Biggins, etc. The fact that we only have one Black Orc weapon variation in the game, plus the Crimson Killers being, I guess, a regiment of renown, hardly a real variation. It would just be nice to get that represented in-game properly with actual Black Orc weapon variations. I've talked a little bit about this before, but having like a shielded Black Orc with okay defensive stats, I mean, we still want Greenskins to have that offensive flavor, certainly. They are very offensive. Having a single kind of defensive anchor unit that has just a little bit more melee defense, but you're sacrificing, obviously, the armor-piercing damage of the regular Black Orcs, quote-unquote regular Black Orcs. Or you could take a dual-hand weapon variant that maybe has even lower melee defense, slightly higher attack, but maybe anti-infantry, or following the other dual-wielding Orc units, anti-large, alternately. Other Orc weapon variations would be welcome as well. I know Orc Boys had spears in tabletop because that's the only Games Workshop tabletop set that I ever actually owned myself, was a unit of Orc Boys, and they did come with spears. I was thinking, in discussing with some people, that rather than giving Orc spears charge defense, because that doesn't really make sense, you actually give them slightly better melee defense, less melee attack, as other similar spears, but rather than giving them charge defense, you actually give them an increased charge bonus. Meaning that, yes, you're going to take horrible losses, but it really is better for you to just countercharge those cavalry with your spears, as weird as that sounds. I mean, if you think about it, a giant orc pressing its full weight while it's charging, even on foot with a spear, would do quite a bit of damage, so maybe you make sort of offensively focused spears for the orcs. Could be interesting. Last, but certainly not least, I promised I would talk about him before. We've got the Goblin Great Shaman. The Little Goblin Great Shaman, one of the smallest lords in the game by size, tiny HP pool on foot. He can take a wolf, which gives him, or a wolf, sorry, Vanguard, and makes him pretty fast. With evasion, he actually gets blazing fast, decent escapability, and he also carries Lore of the Little Wa with Arcane Conduit. Not bad, right? What if I told you that in tabletop this guy could ride a Ragnarok Spider? Well, not this guy specifically, but we can kind of bend that around a little bit. He's not a forest goblin, he's just a regular plains goblin, I think. I don't know. Let's not talk about that. Goblin shamans can ride Ragnarok spiders in tabletop, and I believe there was some work done on this. I don't know, don't quote me on this, I don't have a source at hand, but I want to say there was at some point released in an art book or on someone's portfolio or something, some images of the Ragnarok Spider Shrine, I think is what it's called. Given that most factions in the game now have monster casters, it wouldn't be, I mean, Greenskins even have their own in terms of Azag, it wouldn't be anything outside of the game's current balance and design to implement that Ragnarok Spider for the Goblin Great Shaman. Obviously, he shouldn't have Vanguard while he's on it, unless you want to make that a campaign skill, in which case that would be awesome. But having play-tested it, using a mod that more or less implements it as is in the vanilla balance, or as if you just literally slapped, I mean, not quite one-to-one. The mod maker did provide a little bit of balancing based on my feedback, but it is more or less just adding the Ragnarok Spider to the Great Shaman without too many changes, and it fit in quite well from what I found in the vanilla balance. I'll have a link to that video down in the description below if you want to check out that battle. It's pretty well balanced. I mean, the games were all very close, and considering, you know, Greenskins, as I talked about before, they're dependent on their lords. All their lords have small HP pools. giving them a Spider Lord. I mean, the spiders themselves have high HP pools, right? 6,000 HP, so you could maybe put them up to like close to 7,000, maybe not. But just in general, that high HP, high armor Monster Lord would be nice to have for the greenskins. It wouldn't be an auto pick, certainly, and would be terrible in some matchups, especially those with good armor-piercing missiles. But it would be a nice option to have, and that's really mostly what I'm looking for here, is just more options, more flavor. Variety is the spice of life, as they say, and all of these things, I believe, are things that would be relatively easy for Creative Assembly to add, so hopefully someone from there sees this list. I can't, I don't know what exactly will make it, or if anything from this list will make it. I hope that all of it gets in, because all of it, in my opinion, would be cool and awesome to have. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Would this absolutely, completely, and utterly ruin the game balance, and am I an idiot? Or would these be fun additions, or somewhere in the middle? You guys like some, dislike others? Feel free to discuss below. Thank you very much for watching. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe. I've got daily battle replays and multiplayer guide videos, streams, and more, so be sure to subscribe. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.